Hello, welcome to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, where it is all about helping amazing physicians just like you create a wealthy life free from burnout and with the financial security to practice medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Elisa Zhang. Hello, and welcome back to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. I've been on a bit of a retirement kick these last few weeks. This week's episode continues that trend as I review different withdrawal methods from your retirement portfolio. It's likely the idea of withdrawing from your retirement portfolio still feels far away. If you've listened to last week's podcast episode, you may remember that when testing your goal retirement portfolio, some of the Monte Carlo simulators allow you to choose different withdrawal strategies. I thought it would be useful to review those strategies. It may alleviate some people's concern regarding their retirement portfolio becoming depleted. I have certainly coached on this concern or similar concerns of not having enough when it comes to people as they contemplate retirement. The common withdrawal strategy people envision is the constant dollar strategy, which is generally what people are doing when they are using the 4% rule. The constant dollar strategy withdraws the same amount of money each year, adjusted for inflation. If you use the 4% rule, you would set that constant amount to 4% of your portfolio at the start of retirement and continue to use that same amount, adjusting for inflation, to withdraw every subsequent year. If you have a $5 million portfolio, you would withdraw $200,000 your first year, and then $200,000 adjusted for inflation in each subsequent year. It's a strategy that doesn't adjust based on factors like age or market conditions. When some people hear the 4% rule, they think it means that you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio every year. The constant percentage strategy is a withdrawal strategy that will ensure your portfolio never runs out of money. However, it can mean that if your portfolio decreases in value from its initial value when you retire, that you may have to live on a lot less. On the other hand, if the market does really well, you may end up withdrawing substantially more in a given year. Because of these large swings in withdrawals, this strategy is not actually viable for most people. It is possible to modify the strategy depending on which percentage you use. It may be totally reasonable to withdraw 4% of your portfolio each year, but set minimums and maximums. For example, let's say you choose to withdraw 4% with a minimum of $150,000 and a maximum of $300,000. For example, let's say you choose to withdraw 4% with a minimum of $150,000 and a maximum of $300,000. If you start with a $5 million portfolio, you could withdraw $200,000 for the first year. That's the 4% of $5 million. If the market drops so that your portfolio in year 2 of retirement is valued at, let's say, $4 million, then you could withdraw $160,000 instead of $200,000 in year 2. It may mean making some cuts on your lifestyle, but it's possible that $160,000 still gives you a reasonable lifestyle where maybe you're just cutting back on some vacation. If the market drops again so that your portfolio is worth $3 million, then you would withdraw $150,000, the minimum amount you set, even though it's more than 4% of your current portfolio. On the other hand, if the market increases so that your new portfolio is worth $6 million, then you could withdraw $240,000. By not withdrawing more than the maximum you set, other than adjusting for inflation, you leave more wiggle room for subsequent poor market performance years. With this strategy, it is possible to deplete your portfolio depending on what percentage and limits you set, but it's much less likely compared to if you use the same percentage to determine a constant withdrawal rate due to withdrawing less in years where the market is underperforming. In fact, with the example I gave, there's a 100% success rate for a portfolio of at least 60% stocks lasting for 100 years when using ficalc.app to make those calculations. Don't worry, the minimum and maximum are in today's dollars and get adjusted for inflation. So it's not like you're withdrawing a minimum of $150,000 and a maximum of $300,000 20 years from now, or 20 years from when you begin your retirement. The 95% rule is another modification on the constant percentage rule to preserve the value of your initial portfolio. Annual withdrawals are either a percentage of the current value of the portfolio like 4%, or 95% of your previous year's withdrawal, whichever is larger. This limits a decrease in your withdrawals to cover your spending by a maximum drop of 5%, even if the market plummets. This strategy was introduced in Work Less, Live More, The Way to Semi-Retirement by Robert Playat. The 1/n strategy, or 1 divided by n strategy, determines the amount of withdrawal by dividing your current portfolio value by the number of years you want your portfolio to last for. For example, if you retire at age 60 and you want your retirement portfolio to last until you're at age 95, which is your calculated life expectancy, then your withdrawal amount will be 1/35 of your current portfolio value left. If you make it to age 90, you could withdraw 1/5 of the portfolio value at that time. This is another strategy that guarantees that your portfolio doesn't run out so long as you don't live a lot longer than you expect to. You'll probably want to use multiple life expectancy calculators if you're going to go with this withdrawal technique. For this to work, you want to determine your personal life expectancy and add a few years to that number. It's also a good idea to recalculate your life expectancy and adjust your withdrawals as you age. After all, the older you live, the longer your life expectancy. There are a number of life expectancy calculators online with various questions on your lifestyle choices and health. For fun, I did the Living to 100 life expectancy calculator found at livingto100.com. And my calculated life expectancy was actually 100 years. Truthfully, I was only planning on living to 95 when planning my retirement. But I also recognize that if I live to my 90s, I likely won't need as much income as I would in my 60s, so long as my healthcare expenses aren't ridiculous. I imagine if my healthcare expenses are ridiculous, that I probably don't have that much longer to live either. What if you want to maximize your spending during retirement? Perhaps you don't feel the need to leave an inheritance to anyone or have really embraced that die with zero approach to life. If that's your goal, you would consider using the variable percentage withdrawal strategy. This strategy was developed to combine the best ideas of the previous discussed strategies, the constant dollar, constant percentage, and 1/n strategies. It was developed by a group of Bogleheads, which is what a group of people who follow the principles of Jack Bogle like to call themselves. It uses a worksheet to make the calculations. The link to the worksheet can be found in the show notes. To summarize, the percentage of your portfolio you would withdraw each year depends on your age that year and asset allocation of your portfolio. Using this information, you would look at the table to find the percentage. You have to look up the percentage every year as your age changes every year. Your withdrawal amount will change every year since the value of your portfolio will change as well as the percentage you withdraw. After you make your withdrawal each year, you would rebalance your portfolio. The percentage of withdrawal tends to increase each year as you age. It's also suggested to purchase a single premium immediate annuity when you reach age 80 to ensure sufficient income if you live past 100 years. The current table is only set up for a lifespan of 100 years. Another strategy that leaves you dying with zero is the dynamic safe withdrawal rate, abbreviated dynamic SWR. This strategy was developed by Nest Eggley. With dynamic SWR, your retirement income is determined by the remaining balance of your retirement portfolio, the return on investment, inflation, and your life expectancy. The idea is to use the same formulation that insurance companies use to determine an inflation-adjusted annuity. Many of the physicians I have coached have tended towards wanting to be more conservative and maximize longevity. If you want to leave an inheritance for your children or grandchildren, you'll want a withdrawal strategy that never depletes your portfolio, but you also want to be able to enjoy spending during your retirement years. If you consider the goal of a university endowment to be able to maximize current withdrawals to fund current expenses, but in a way that never depletes endowment so that it can continue to fund the university indefinitely, then the model that is used to determine how much to withdraw each year for university endowments could also be applied to retirement portfolios. If that appeals to you, then you could use Yale University's equation for determining a given year's withdrawal. For the first year, you are able to withdraw 5% of your portfolio value. Then each subsequent year, you would withdraw 1.5% of your portfolio value plus 70% of your previous year's withdrawal amount. This strategy responds to market conditions and has a low likelihood of exhausting your portfolio. The Vanguard Dynamic Spending Strategy is a variation on the constant percentage strategy, but incorporates floor and ceiling values. For example, you may choose a withdrawal rate of 4%, but ensure that withdrawal does not decrease by more than a certain percentage or increase by more than a certain percentage. If we go back to our $5 million portfolio, which gave us $200,000 at a 4% withdrawal, you could choose to ensure spending never decreases by more than 5% so that you would have at least $190,000 the second year, but also set so it never increased by more than 20% so that your maximum withdrawal would be $240,000 the second year. You could also adjust those numbers for inflation. If the market were to decrease again on your third year of retirement, then you may end up withdrawing $180,500 to fund that year. Jonathan Guyton and William Klinger developed the Guyton-Klinger Guardrails framework in 2006. Guyton introduced a precursor framework in 2004. The framework uses decision rules and incorporates guardrails to adjust withdrawals, which make it a bit more complicated. It does adjust for market conditions, accounts for inflation, and allows for excess returns to be reinvested in a rebalanced portfolio. The initial withdrawal rate is determined by a table that considers the asset allocation of the portfolio and the desired success rate ranging from 95% to 100%. Withdrawal rates range from 4.5% to 6.3%. Withdrawals each subsequent year are increased by the prior year's inflation rate and modified by any decision rules. The primary decision rule is portfolio management, which determines the source of each year's withdrawal. After the first year, in years where an asset class has a positive return that produced a weight exceeding the desired asset allocation, the excess allocation is sold and the cash is set aside to be used for future withdrawal requirements. Portfolio withdrawals are funded in the following order. First, the overweight in equity asset class from the prior year that was just discussed and was sold for cash. Second, any overweighting in fixed income from the previous year. After that, any cash on hand would be used for spending. Next would be withdrawals from any remaining fixed income assets, and finally, withdrawals from remaining equity assets in order of the prior year's performance. Finally, no withdrawals are taken from any equity following a year of a negative run if there's sufficient cash or fixed income assets to fund the required withdrawal, meaning that if it's a down year for the stock market, you would not sell any stocks if you have enough cash and fixed income, including bonds, for your spending needs. The withdrawal rule determines the conditions when the withdrawals are kept the same from one year to the next. If the total return of portfolio is negative, and that year's withdrawal would be greater than the initial withdrawal rate, then there's no increase to withdrawal for the following year. The first guardrail is the capital preservation rule, which cuts back your annual withdrawal rate when your portfolio value drops too low. If the withdrawal amount is 20% above the initial withdrawal rate, then the amount you would withdraw is cut to 10%. If using the 4% withdrawal rate for the first year, you would decrease the withdrawal if the amount you would withdraw is 20% more than 4% or more than 4.8% of the new value of the portfolio. Consider a portfolio value of $5 million for which you withdraw 4% or $200,000 during the first year of your retirement. If after many years, in some future year of your retirement, the value of the portfolio has dropped so that it is now $4 million, then withdrawing $200,000, the amount you withdrew in year one, would be 5% of $4 million, which exceeds 4.8%. In this case, you would reduce the withdrawal amount by 10% or withdraw $180,000 instead of $200,000. That also means that that number is not adjusted for inflation. So depending on how many years down the line it is, you may be doing significant cutbacks. That being said, generally, as long as things go relatively well as they have for the last many years, your retirement portfolio is more likely to grow over time than it is to deplete. The question is how much it's growing compared to inflation. The second guardrail rule is the prosperity rule, which ensures the amount you withdraw in a given year does not go too low. It's similar to the capital preservation rule, but adjust the withdrawal rate upward so that you actually have more to spend when things are going well. When withdrawals have decreased to 20% below the initial withdrawal rate, then the new amount to withdraw is increased by 10%. A 20% decrease to a 4% withdrawal rate is 3.2%. So anytime the withdrawal amount is less than 3.2% of your portfolio, you would increase the amount withdrawn by 10%. For example, if there are some good years of market growth, the portfolio may now be worth $7 million. $200,000 withdrawal would only be 2.9% of the portfolio value, so you would increase the withdrawal for the year to $220,000. But in Guyton and Kingler's original publication, initial withdrawal rates of 5.2 to 5.6% were sustainable at the 99% confidence standard for portfolios containing at least 65% equities. With 50% equities, the initial withdrawal rate drops to 4.6% with the 99% confidence standard, which is still above 4%. Guyton previously had an inflation rule which capped increases to withdrawals to 6%, even when inflation exceeds that amount, with no makeup for capped inflation adjustment. This was dropped in the 2006 publication. There are other withdrawal strategies, but I think this is a good summary to show all the ways you could put your portfolio to the test for retirement. The truth is, once you're in retirement, you can always adjust your spending as needed, depending on market conditions and inflation. It can be hard to predict how much you'll want to spend in retirement, which will also be influenced by your age and health when you retire and as the years go by. I know that this episode was rather technical, but the take-home point is really to show that there's not just one way to withdraw from your retirement portfolio, and there are a lot of ways to adjust depending on what happens with market conditions during your retirement. I think the best strategy when it comes to your retirement portfolio is potentially save a little bit more than you think you'll need, and then enjoy that money when you're in retirement. Thank you so much for being a listener to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. Next week, we'll have a change in topics with a guest episode that you will not want to miss. If you've been loving the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, please share with others or leave a 5-star review at Apple Podcast or whatever podcast app you use. It really helps to get the word out, and I do put a lot of effort into making quality episodes to help increase financial literacy. I would love for as many people to have this resource as possible if increasing financial literacy is one of their goals. In my opinion, it should be everyone's goal because I want all of us to be able to have a wealthy and happy retirement. I'll be back next week with a guest on the next episode of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. Have a great week. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and colleagues. And now for the disclaimer. I am not a certified financial planner, accountant, or attorney, and nothing I say should be construed as professional investment, tax, or legal advice. This show is primarily for your education and entertainment. I am a physician, but I'm probably not your physician. So if you need any medical advice, please contact your own physician. Thank you.